Hey, 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 Dr. M here. Always a pleasure to be able to come to you with our Peace Driven Leader Insights. This particular episode is around Shelly. Shelly really discussed the power that we have by being able to lean in and get curious about our relationship with food and how mindful eating really can impact the way we experience life, the way we feel, and how we show up. So many women, they struggle. We struggle with food because we make food around discipline. And the idea that she has is that it's understanding that there is a partnership that's happening. It's not a punishment. And being able to create a relationship that feels safe. And so, what I like to do with these peace driven leader insights is to be able to kind of pull some nuggets from a peace driven leader lens so that you can see the difference in how you lead as a leader and how you lead differently as a peace driven leader. And so, a woman's relationship with food often reflects her relationship with safety, worth, and identity. And so when we look at it in that way, now we're hyper aware of our behavior. And one of the things that Shelly was saying is that instead of judging ourselves, we really lean in to see. I noticed that, I'm eating around this time of night. I noticed that when I'm stressed, I tend to use food as a way to mitigate that stress. Why is that? And really leaning in and to the resistance and letting that be like a treasure box to be able to unlock more insights about you and where you really are, right? Versus looking at it as like some forceful thing that you have to be disciplined around. That was a very vulnerable moment in the podcast. You all got to see the full episode where she talked about how powerhouse women who are killing it in the corporate space, leading multi-million-dollar companies and, teams over, 50 plus, 100 plus team members and feeling the shame and the guilt around not being able to be disciplined enough to push back that ice cream or to push back that wine or to push back whatever your your vice is, right? And how that shame really can create this disconnection, with ourselves. And so really want to do some deeper work. And we realize, through the conversation that when it comes to food, it really is deeper than what you eat in the kitchen. It's really deeper than what you do in the gym. And really, how do we really get ourselves in a point where we go a little bit further and pull back the layers, right? To see what's really underneath there. Because when you create a partnership with yourself when it comes to food, you no longer get frustrated with yourself when discipline fails, because that is a sign. We see the lack of discipline in the area as a signal to something more. All right. So, what I want you to do, is really lean in and ask yourself questions. Questions are slaves to answers. And that's why I love questions so much. If you follow me, you know that I definitely ask a lot of questions. The one question that peace driven leaders ask themselves often is, what do you need? And what they're doing is we're talking to our bodies and we're saying, what do you need? And a lot of times I hold my body and I literally ask, what do you need today? What do you need? And I pause and actually listen, right? Actually listen, versus what am I allowed to eat? Let me look at this diet. Let me see what the keto says. Let me look on this app and see what I'm supposed to eat. No, 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 no. How do we move to a place of leadership where we are just tuning into what our body needs, right? And really creating a customized meal plan based off of your blood work. And this is from another podcast where she talked about the power of blood work and, talking through that. If you all, this is your first podcast, I can just encourage you to subscribe. Go to YouTube, subscribe so you don't miss another podcast because this is really growth leadership on steroids. We're pulling experts from all different parts of the world. Literally, and we're pulling insights, leadership insights, growth leadership on legacy, legacy level insight so that you truly have these micro learning experiences, right, from different cultures, that is really going to be like little little jewels that you can take with you or even tools that you can take with you on your journey. So another thing that we talked about with Shelly was discernment over diet culture. A lot of times we do not trust ourselves, and that was one of the big things that she saw a lot in her work. And we all have this built-in discernment, but for some reason we don't yield to it the way we should. I say some reason, but it's really because we don't trust ourselves. And that comes from a lot of different experiences. I mean, your soul knows what your reason is. It could have been past experiences that you made. It could have been choices that you made that just prevented you from being able to trust yourself for real, right? And society as a whole really puts this high standard on women and how we should look, right? So there's this inner judgment that's happening as well. And so I encourage you as you're listening to lean into that discernment. These are some questions that peace driven leaders ask themselves. Are you ready? Let me read some questions here. So discernment asks, am I hungry or am I overwhelmed? Right? Am I craving sugar or am I craving rest? That's a good one. Am I eating from nourishment or am I eating from numbness? That's really good, right? This is about the emotional intelligence around food. So we really talked about that. Another really big key that I'll leave you all with is that Shelley spoke about is safety with food. And so I think a lot of times what we do is that we look for strategy. This diet, count the calories instead. This works instead, so it's this strategy positioning that we do. When actuality, our body is looking for a place to be safe, something that doesn't have all the guardrails, around it, something that feels more liberated. Many women don't overeat because they lack self control. Shelley basically said that they overeat because their nervous systems are tired of surviving, right? And that's why a lot of times you'll do good and you're good, we're a good girl, we're a good steward, and we go 6 weeks or 8 weeks on the diet plan and all that, and we fast, and we do intermittent fasting and all the strategies, and then we'll find ourselves just plummeting. And then right there at the end of that slide of, that slip and slide slope is shame. And we stay there for as long as our body will let us, and then we pick ourselves back up, and then we climb back up that slippery slope, and we do it all over again, right? So that's one of those things that we really talked about in the podcast is how do we start moving in the direction where we interrupt that cycle? What does that look like? Really, really go and listen to that podcast with Shelly. I cannot stress enough. You'll see this thread of peace, not being passive, and understanding that all these things that we're saying, and when it comes to moving differently as a peace driven leader, it's not passive stuff. This is courage work. This is legacy work. This is the thing that we really landed with and really, came home with was that this is bigger than food. This is legacy work because the way in which we see food is the way in which oftentimes our children will relate to food because they're observing us. And so it's bigger than us. And so that really puts like this, hopefully not pressure, but a a presence, that moves you into this charge of man, what step is next? Now, what's the next step I can take? And I want to share with you some boundaries to keep in mind as you are moving through. Because as you know, peace driven leaders, we're big on boundaries, setting proper boundaries. If you haven't followed my content, I have a system called BOSS. It's the BOSS method. It is how peace driven leaders move and lead. Definitely check that out. Do a search on the BOSS method so that you can really see. And the B is for boundaries, proper boundaries. And so this is what it sounds like from a peace driven leader lens. I stop when I'm satisfied, right? Not necessarily when the food is done, like mama used to say. You better eat all that food. Don't waste the food. You keep eating. I don't eat to prove that I'm good, right? I don't have to reward myself with food. One of the things that Shelley said is that I, my relationship with food can still be pleasurable. Okay, it doesn't have to be pizza and brownies, but what else can it be that still is pleasurable? What else can I enjoy? It doesn't have as much calories. We don't have to sacrifice pleasure. And I really love that. And boundaries are not restrictions, they are protection. I'll say that again. Boundaries are not restrictive, they create protection, right? The Peace Driven Leader lens is I don't starve to prove that I'm strong. Right? Isn't that weird? We do that. Starve ourselves to prove that we're disciplined, to prove that we have what it takes. No. A woman's relationship with food is never just about food. That's the one thing I really want you to take with you. It's not about food. It's about how you lead yourself, how you trust yourself, how you really see yourself. And so I want to encourage you, for those of you who are really having some weight loss goals, we all kind of do in some way, whether we want to get bigger or smaller, or, more toned or whatever our goal is when it comes to body image. Keep these insights in mind because you don't want to lose yourself, right? Trying to gain this image that you have in your mind. It's really going to come from the inside out, right? And I want to just encourage you on your journey, as you continue to do the work. This is courageous work, and I commend you for being here, for listening to the end. So until next time, I look forward to seeing you next week on the next episode. Bye bye for now.